Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday Tea Time History Chat Live. I hope you've got your cups of tea or something stronger or maybe something weaker. Depends on what kind of day you're having and what kind of health stint you're probably on. Welcome. So yes, we're back to Thursday Tea Time History Chat Live with me, Philippa Lacey Brewell. And each week, thank you for joining me, everyone who comes back week after week as we meander through some history chat. Maybe some anniversaries that are happening this week, some history events, things I'm involved in or have been involved in that I can tell you about, all sorts. And each week I think, what am I going to... Lisa's got the kettle on. Good girl, Lisa. Each week I think, well, what am I going to talk about this week? And then I make a list. And then it's quite extensive. Thank you, anyone who joined me last week for the birthday episode, which was gigantic and epic. I think it was 1 hour 40 in the end. So thank you anyone who joined me live for that, especially. Maybe you caught it on the catch up on Instagram or on YouTube, and maybe even on the podcast, because every episode of this goes live on the podcast as well within within a couple of hours. Good morning, Marianne, over there in California. How are you? How are you doing? So today I've got quite a bit to cover. I'm going to tell you about the interview I did with Gareth Russell. I spoke to him Tuesday night. That was very cool. So I'll tell you about that. We had the History After Dark room last night talking about the best British monarch. So we'll look at that. Some of the other live events I've got and other history anniversaries this week as well. We'll go through a few of them. Hello, Anindita over there in India. Welcome. So before I get started, just wanted to thank you all for joining me. Hi, Janice. How are you? And a special thank you, obviously, always to my YouTube members, my patrons, and anyone who has bought me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Philippa, because I'm just really grateful. Thank you so much. It does help. Bobby Ann missed History After Dark yesterday. Oh, you were driving, so it kept cutting out. That's annoying. My signal kept cutting out and I was sat here. At least you had a good reason. You can catch any of the Instagram lives that we do. You can catch again. And I will tell you a bit more in a moment or in a little while as well about the History After Dark podcast, which goes live next Wednesday. So I'll tell you a bit more about that as well. Each week I'm streaming here Thursday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Instagram and on YouTube, both of which end up on the playback. Good morning, Jenna. Hope you're well. They end up on the playback as well, so you can see them. And like I say, you can catch them on the podcast as well. So welcome, everyone. If you're on Instagram, remember my hearts, say hi. Morning to everyone who's left a comment on YouTube. If you wouldn't mind giving it the thumbs up, and also I love to just get a hello from you, as Lisa, Marian, Anindita, and Janice. Janice, I pronounce your name different every time. How is that? I bet you didn't even know there were so many ways of saying your name. Yeah, but as you all have said that, hi, thank you very much. Feel free as we go along to comment on what we're talking about. Maybe you've got a question I will endeavour to answer. On Instagram, I can pretty much see most of the comments as they come up. Last night, I had a bit of an issue on History After Dark where they just froze and I daren't touch the screen because then things like I disappear happens and things like that. So if you've asked me something and I seem to have completely forgotten to answer it, it's fine. Put it back in the comments if you don't mind. So fabulous. Before I go on, also I do like to give a special thank you to people, because thank you so much for supporting me here. But also, you know, if you are a YouTube member or you buy me a coffee or you're a patron member, that literally helps me stay here and continue to do this live streaming for free. And I have some special mentions. Colleen bought me 3 coffees last week. Mwah, 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 mwah. Thank you so much. And you can do that at buymeacoffee.com/Philippa, 1L, 2 Ps, because there's lots of different ways, it turns out, of spelling Philippa. I've obviously got the best way. Does anyone else think that? Now, my YouTube members, I've not made special mention of you before, so I'm going to do that now. And Indita, you're a member of the behind the scenes tier, and Colonnada House is as well. Laurie has the fun badges and emojis, and Leanne is a British traveller. Ipsa says, yay for the podcast. Yes, for the History After Dark podcast. Yes. Now, I will mention that hi Colleen, welcome. I've just said about your buying me coffees. When any podcast goes live, we're doing it via Anchor. It can take a little while for the bigger platforms to have them on, only like a couple of weeks or so. But I think they need to see that it's a bona fide podcast, that you put out more than one episode, etc., etc. So when the History After Dark podcast goes live, look out on all of my social media, but especially on Instagram on history.after.dark, because I'll share the direct link. Oh, can I do that on history.after.dark? Don't know. Might be something just for the bigger channels. I'm not sure. But I will certainly share the link direct to the podcast. Now, we've it was a few weeks ago, recorded a special edition for the podcast. So this is not one that you will find on Instagram, although it is a topic we've covered on Instagram before. And let's check, and I've got my microphone on. Otherwise, I'm sure someone would have told me by now. It's about the history of swearing and throwing insults. So a perfect first topic, I think, to have picked. Oh, my first sip of tea, very nice. Also, Lynn has become a new patron. She's done a year's worth of upper class membership, and she gets 10% off if you do that. You get a bit of a discount. So welcome to Lynn on the Patreon as well. And I'll let you know, because some things that we're doing on Patreon you'll get a sight of anyway, and I talk about them a lot on here anyway. So it's quite interesting what we get up to. But like I said, last week was the epic 1 hour 40 session. I don't know if I will get there today. Probably not. I've got things to do, you know. Well, sort of. No, I have. But mind you, I this is probably the highlight of my week. Well, this History After Dark, getting to chat to everybody about history, not really, doesn't really get any better than that for me. Good morning, Orlando. Rio. Have to give him the morning song. The only thing that could make it slightly better is if I'm on location, although it does make it shorter. Now, that will be happening next week. So next week's Thursday Tea Time Live, I will be on location. So look out for that. I will only be on Instagram, because when I'm out and about, I can only stream live to one platform. So I'll be on Instagram for those of you who catch me on YouTube, but I will upload it to YouTube after the fact, because I'll probably give you a little walk around or something. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. So you can check that out next week, and I will be as close to 1 o'clock as I possibly can, unless something happens like a massive rainstorm or something, because I will be outside. But so cross your fingers for nice weather next week for me when I'm on location. So in today's episode, what we're going to talk about, we've got some history anniversaries. I want to just tell you about my interview I did with Gareth Russell. That ties in with other things that are happening, and with a book recommendation. The live events, I've said we've got the just for fun question, so I will let you know. Excuse me, I will let you know the answer to last week's just a fun question. I'll remind you of what it was first, and then I'll set you another one. I've got news about availability on a tour, so that's quite exciting for anyone who has missed out. And yeah, and if you ever want a summary, by the way, of everything that I'm talking about in these, well, I say everything, all the events especially that I'm talking about in these sessions, then if you sign up to my newsletter at britishhistorytours.com, then you get an email from me every Sunday. Right, let's get on to some history. After I take a sip. Right. Oh, I shouldn't touch the screen. See? Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay. So we have some Orlando, love and speak to you and see you singing and dancing in a Rio like vibe. Yeah. That's from the cartoon Rio. Did anyone ever see that? Kids the kids cartoon, yeah. Yeah. But I'm going to try and touch the screen and get the comments to come back on. Right, okay. So we have a few history anniversaries that have either just gone by or are coming up. Now, the big one, and it won't surprise you, I think I talked about this last week, I must have done, is the execution of Mary Queen of Scots. She was executed on the 8th of February. Where am I? 1587. Sorry, I'm just looking for something. 1587. And at Fotheringay Castle. And this is the culmination of 20 years, almost 20 years being imprisoned in England. And we talked about it on, did we talk about it on History After Dark? I can't remember, but I remember someone saying, did they think that, was it basically a mistake for Mary to come to England? And I think it's one of those things that we can easily, clearly identify it as a mistake after the fact. But in the circumstances that she came to England, she just lost the final battle. That she tried to. She'd been deposed. I want to say Carberry Hill, but it's not, is it? Anyway, lost the final battle, escaped into England. But if memory serves me right, not necessarily was going to come and stay here. I'm not sure her original intention was to come here, but correct me if I'm wrong. And so she ends up here. She thinks Elizabeth is going to be so outraged at the treatment of her that she will provide an army, a force to support Mary to go straight back up to Scotland and get her throne back. Now, of course, what Mary doesn't realize or know or anticipate the importance of is how dangerous Elizabeth's council already believe her to be. And that rocks right back to when she was married to the Dauphin. When Mary I dies, Mary, Queen of Scots, is still married to the Dauphin. He hasn't died yet. And the King Henry, the something of France, sorry, gets them to, they display the coats of arms of England on, they quarter them or whatever, and they have the coats of arms of England. It's a clear snub to Elizabeth. Elizabeth isn't the rightful queen according to Catholic Europe, because her mother's marriage to Henry VIII wasn't valid, because Catherine of Aragon's still was. Therefore, Elizabeth's a bastard, and therefore she can't inherit the throne. So when Mary, Queen of Scots, as the Dauphin, when she's married to Francois the Dauphin, and they display the English coat of arms, because as soon as Mary has died, it's a clear indication that Mary, at least her family or her French family, see her as the rightful heir to the English throne. This is clocked by the English court, the ambassador to the French court, and reported back. So when Mary then turns up in England later, after she has all the trouble in Scotland, her cards are already marked by the English, by Elizabeth's council. So she's already seen as a threat. Whether she realised quite how much that would, whether she realised that, she should, but whether she realised that had impacted her position so much, I don't know. I think she thought that what had happened to her, and the fact that Elizabeth was kin, was a queen in the same landmass, that she would be wanting to support her to go back up to Scotland and grab her crown back. That, of course, didn't happen. So you have 19 years of Mary being in captivity. And as that period continues, I didn't know how dangerous falcons were. Oh, badges. I don't know what you mean in Doug. Sorry. As that time continues and the Catholic threat is either, I don't know if it gets worse or if it's always the same level and you just get more and more stuff, obviously, over a period of time. If you periodically find evidence of Catholic plots against Elizabeth, then, so I don't know if it gets worse. Maybe it does. Certainly the attitude towards practicing Catholics gets worse and worse. And that's never going to make a situation more tolerant and more peaceful. Anyway, so we end up with Mary in such a desperate situation. I spoke last week, and it's in the blog. Okay, and it's in the blog that I've just done for patrons last week about Tutbury Castle. The conditions that Mary was kept in were horrendous. I must have talked about this last week, didn't I? Elizabeth might not have wanted to sign her death warrant. That did not mean she didn't want her dead. The Mary problem was something that Elizabeth did just wish could go away. And so Mary's position becomes more and more desperate, to the point where she is getting involved in plots to overthrow Elizabeth and put her on the throne. What else is she left to do? Melissa asks, did Mary and Elizabeth actually ever physically meet each other? There is no evidence that they did, no. So unless something turns up, then no. And it would be interesting if it did, because a lot of air and ink has been spent discussing why Elizabeth would never have met Mary. So there's lots of theories or reasons that people put forward for why Elizabeth wouldn't have that physical meeting with Mary, including things like, I mean, Elizabeth was vain. Maybe not any more vain than anyone who sticks a selfie on Instagram these days and puts a filter on it first, to me included. But Mary Mary was taller than her when she was young. She was younger, 9 years younger. She had the same red hair. She was considered beautiful, but also considered charismatic. She was charming. And someone mentioned it last week. I think Elizabeth needed an element of being able to dehumanize Mary in order to be able to do what she needed to do. And that isn't just ultimately sign the death warrant. Like I say, Mary's conditions were, particularly at Tutbury, that's the one I know the most about, because I've spoken to Leslie Smith and done interviews with Leslie Smith on this. And so we talked about it at length. But her conditions there were incredibly harsh. Yes, she's at a castle, but every 3 days her windows and all the hangings are covered in black mold. Such is the dampness in her lodgings at the castle. Jenna says it probably made it easier for her to not have met her in person. Exactly. I think so. She's also told she's a big threat. It would have been interesting if they had ever met. If they have met and something comes up and we find out they've met, then it evidently didn't change the course of what was going to happen. So if we continue with our assumption that, or belief that they didn't meet, I wonder how it would have changed the final outcome. Now, of course, Mary's executed. She goes to her death as a Catholic martyr, so she wears a scarlet gown. One account says she prays she prays loudly in Latin because the priest overseeing the execution is trying to read English Protestant prayers. She's having none of that. And there's an account as well that she mutters her motto in the end is "my beginning," which would fit. But she was incredibly ill by this point as well. There's the talk of lifting up her head, and actually it was a wig. I'm not sure that would have been a surprise. But yeah, she's incredibly ill by this point as well. So she goes to her death. Now this is 1587, and Cecil especially has persuaded Elizabeth that Mary is the Catholic threat. She's the problem. What happens in 1588? Philip II of Spain decides to invade, and we have the Spanish Armada. Well done, Cecil. That really helped that situation, didn't it? Because then they had a reason to another reason to invade. So anyway, that's one that's one anniversary we've had. What date are we today? The 10th. So today, in 1840, Queen Victoria marries Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg. Now, because she's queen, she outranks Albert, so she is the one who has to propose. That's probably about as forward thinking as or it's not even her choice, but that Victoria ever got. We discussed Victoria last night because she'd been put forward in I've got it with me, in the BBC History magazine as someone's nomination for best British monarch. I don't think so. I don't even see. I mean, if you think there's something that Victoria directly did that would be a reason to put her forward as Britain's best monarch, then please put it in, because I'd be very interested to know what it is. Anyway, so that was so they got married today. Yeah, the 11th of Feb. So tomorrow is the anniversary in 1503 of the death of Elizabeth of York. Elizabeth of York, the mother of Greece is letting a mad journalist down today. The Wi-Fi signal is not strong enough. You have to catch me later if it kicks you off. So yes, so tomorrow is the anniversary in 1503 of the death of Elizabeth of York, the mother of Henry VIII and wife of Henry VII. Jenna says, I don't think she was horrible because there have been worse, but I don't think she was wonderful either. Well, yes, exactly. So there's nothing that sticks out that that I would say is a reason to nominate Victoria as best British monarch. Indeed. So Jenna, so yes, right, back to Elizabeth of York. She dies on her 37th birthday, and she dies following childbirth. She'd given birth to a little girl called Catherine, who was named Catherine, who also unfortunately died. A mad journalist, I like your perseverance. Excellent. Kicked off 5 times and she's still here. Good girl. And Elizabeth of York dies in the royal apartments in the White Tower at the Tower of London. The previous year, Prince Arthur, Prince of Wales, their eldest son, had died. And so they were left with one son, Henry. And so they try and have more children, try and get another boy. And unfortunately, it kills Elizabeth. Now, I've got a video on this, so please go and have a look at that on YouTube about the death of Elizabeth of York, but the bit that I've focused on is something called the Vaux Passional. And if you haven't heard of this or seen it, you will love it. Sorry, I've missed a few comments. Lisa says the only thing that Victoria did to help women was use chloroform during childbirth. Yeah. Yeah, push pain relief for childbirth, absolutely. Chewing Gums is in Portsmouth. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So where was I? The Vaux Passional. Now, the Vaux Passional is an illuminated manuscript that dates from around the turn of the 15th into the 16th centuries. Is that right? Yeah. And it's held in the National Archives of Wales in Aberystwyth. And the presentation page, this actually, I mean, literally, it shows the book being presented to Henry VII. But in the background are 3 children, 2 girls who are kneeling, facing each other, playing a game or something, with black headdresses. Behind them is a little boy in a green top with his head in his hands or in his arm, on leaning up against a bed which is black. It's covered in black material, and this is thought to be a depiction of Henry VIII, as he would become, grieving for his mother. He was 11 years old when she died. And it's really poignant. It's really powerful. And I've put that in that video. So if you're interested, please go and have a look at that video of mine on YouTube. It's about the death of Elizabeth of York, but I do cover the Vaux Passional in there. What else have we got? The 12th of Feb. So we're coming up to the execution of Lady Jane Grey, or Queen Jane. We've also got the execution, I think it's 13th of Feb. I've not written this down, but I think the 13th of Feb is the execution of Catherine Howard. So we've got February must have been season for it. So Queen Jane, she was queen, better known as Lady Jane Grey, executed at Tower. Now, she had gone into the Tower the previous July. When did Edward VI die? And she'd gone in preparation for her coronation. Mary I raised an army super quick, and support for Jane and her entourage had fallen away. Yes, I will come to that, Jenna. Do you have that? I don't know if it's Valentine's Day. Is it? Sorry, we'll get back to that in a minute. So Lady Jane Grey had been held. Mary had kept her at the Tower. But it wasn't until the Wyatt Rebellion kicked off that Jane and her husband, Guildford Dudley, were executed. She was executed within the Tower walls, one of only a handful of people who ever were. And she would have been very young. We're not sure exactly how young. So Lady Jane Grey, Catherine Howard, another young lady executed. So I'll come back to talking about her in a minute, because that was a big part of what I was talking to Gareth Russell about the other night. So I'll tell you more about that. Chewing Gum says February was obviously not a good month in history. Well, it was if you were an executioner. Jenna says she'd seen the 16th. I also have the 16th. The 14th. Right, okay, let's get on to what Jenna's talking about. So this is Henry VIII is buried in this month in 1547. Now, he's buried, I'm going to say, on the 16th of February. His funeral procession begins on the 14th of February. So I don't know if that's where you're getting the 14th from, Jenna. unless there's a different account. And he's buried in St George's Chapel, Windsor. Won't surprise you to know I've got a video on that. And in fact, I've got two videos. One, have I done two different ones? I think I have, yes. So one is about the funeral procession and the funeral, and I have another one which is quite an old one now. I went live when going live on YouTube was quite a new thing, to talk about why Henry VIII is buried where he is, why he is still there. So that's if you haven't seen that one already, people like that video, so please go and have a look. I think you'll enjoy that one. Also, it is that video that I'm setting this week's Just for Fun question from. So Henry VIII is buried is the video. If you're on Instagram, not Instagram, sorry. If you're on YouTube, then I've popped in the comments the link to the video you'll need to go and have a look for this week's Just for Fun question. So let me set that, and then I will come back to talking about Catherine Howard. So last week's Just for Fun question was, and it was based on the interview I did with, chat I had with Phil Downing, who is the house manager at Harvington Hall. And if any of you joined us for History After Dark last week, Phil joined us to talk about his 36 hours in a priest hide. It was History After Dark, so we didn't call it a priest hide. But anyway, so I've got my talk with Phil standing outside of Harvington Hall, and in that he answers this question, or gives us this information. What year was the Elizabethan phase of Harvington Hall begun? Did you do your homework, everybody? Did you go and watch the video and find out? So what year was the Elizabethan phase of Harvington Hall begun? Because there's actually a Georgian phase. There's been a house on that site since, I want to say Saxon times, but I'm a long time basically. But yeah, the Elizabethan house, and actually the Elizabethan house would have been it would have had a courtyard. So there's only half of it left. Lisa says 1578. Ooh, not quite. It's close though. It is in the 1570s. Now, when the house was built, this the growing anti-Catholic state basically was happening, and so Catholics, Genesis 1570, a little bit later, so it was growing, and the so the house builders, you've got the most famous priest hide creator, Nicholas Owen, who did create the priest hides at Harvington. And one of the things that Phil was telling us about last week in History After Dark is that Nicholas Owen, there was no two priest hides were the same, and that's why, and that's so that if they found one, the next house, it wasn't going to be easy to find the next, because they were unique, which is why the ones at Harvington are also unique. They have they have 7, but there's the two favorite ones that people remember are under the stairs, so you lift up the stairs, and the other one is a swinging beam, and it's behind that one that Phil hid for 36 hours in the pitch black with I think one bottle of water and an apple. I didn't ask him about the food. Did we ask him about the food? We asked him about drink. We didn't ask him about the food. So the Elizabethan phase of Harvington Hall, excuse me, was begun in 1573. So at this time, well done, Emmy Boas. You got it spot on. Anyone else? Thank you for Elements of Brie for your guest, and Donna. at least says, could there be more that haven't been discovered yet? And more priest hides? Not in the hall itself. However, half the hall has been lost. So there's two sides of the hall still remaining. It would have been a proper courtyard type house. So it would have had four sides. Thank you, Emmy. It would have had four sides. So I would have thought unlikely that you'd have that many priest hides in the two surviving wings, and that they would have been none in the wings that are lost. So I don't know that there's any more to be discovered there, but certainly that I imagine there would have been more on that site. So that interview with Phil is still available on my YouTube channel, and the History After Dark chat with Phil is available on the history.after.dark channel profile on Instagram. It's well worth watching. We actually managed to keep it under an hour. We didn't do that last night. It was 2 hours last night. But it will also be available on the podcast, but not for quite a few weeks, because we have a backlog of wonderful episodes to treat you with first. Now, I said I would get back to... Oh, actually, no, let me just say that's the just for... Oh, no. Oh, I'm getting way ahead of myself today. I'm going to set next week's question. And then I'm going to tell you about some competitions to actually win something. Not just these just for fun ones. So, based on my Henry VIII is buried. Did I call it that? Yeah, I did. Henry VIII is buried. That's what I called the video. Based on that video, how long, or the information is in that video, you might know the answer anyway. How long was Henry VIII's funeral procession in length? So in a physical distance. And that's this week's question, which you can let me know your answer to. Might do it the week after next, because next week I am on location bringing you this, and that generally means I'm totally distracted by where I am and telling you about it. Doug says, would them finding one, even an empty one, result in the owners being in big trouble if the priest was found or not? Yes, I think so. So if Elizabeth's men came a looking, and they're looking for evidence, of you harboring a priest. If they found a priest hide that's large enough for a person, and there's evidence that a person either has been in there or is, Phil talked about how they would already have wine in the priest hides, maybe a little bit of food, so they were prepared. Now, yeah, so if they came across that, then that would be evidence that you were harbouring or intending to harbour a priest. However, houses did have these hidey holes. This is before banks, so houses would have these hiding places for valuables anyway. So I suppose it depends on whether they believed you or not, and what they found when they found the hole, even if there wasn't a priest in it. There's a priest in it, obviously. Case closed. Okay, so the prizes, the competitions where you can actually win something. The competition to win a signed copy, which I still leave up on my shelf rather than show you, I'm so sorry. The Private Lives of the Tudors, Tracy Borman's book. She signed it for me, and you still have a chance to win that. That competition is open until the end of this month, the 28th of February. And to be in with a chance of winning that signed copy of the book, which I'll send you for free wherever you live, then it is, you go over to my YouTube channel, watch the interview, please. Well, subscribe to my channel, like the video, and then there's a question which you'll get the answer to if you watch the interview. I have another one coming up. So next Friday, the 18th, that is Friday, isn't it? Is that Friday? I will be releasing my interview with Heather Darcy about Honor of Cleves. I've spoken about this before. It is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So Heather put in incredible work looking at the archives in Cleves. Who'd have thought to do that? Well, she did, and she discovered a far more interesting and plausible story as to how come Henry and Anne's, it's Friday, thank you, Jenna. How come Henry and Anne, or Anna, however you want to, obviously her name was Anna, but we call her Anne because that's anglicised, how they how come their relationship broke down and why it seemed to break down from the get-go. And then when they're not married, they have a fantastic relationship. So Heather's work and Heather's discoveries explain that and give a far more plausible account than Henry had his nose put out of joint because she didn't recognize him and wouldn't let him kiss her, and she smelt and she was ugly, even though she plainly was not ugly. Colleen, so the interview with Heather will go live on Friday the 18th. Sorry, I was just reading. Janice says, could you post the homework question to the post video comments, please? Yes, I will try and do that. Yes. I've got it. Yes, I've got it running up now, haven't I? But I haven't got it for later. I will do that. So the interview with Heather will go live for everyone next Friday. For patrons, it will go live next Tuesday, because patrons always get any videos that are out, they get them early. So that's a bit of a Bobby bonus for everyone who's in my Patreon. So that is fantastic. Now, what I will do with that one is it's same deal. There'll be a question which you which you need to watch the video in order to get the answer to. But then you can I will send you either one of Heather's books. So she's written her first book on of Cleves, and then she's written one about the children of Cleves. So whichever one you want, I will get sent to you. Now, let's get back on to Catherine Howard, because this links nicely to my chat interview with Gareth Russell that I recorded on Tuesday night. So Catherine Howard, the anniversary of Catherine Howard's beheading, I think is the 13th. I'm not actually quite sure. It's soon anyway. Now, he wrote this book, which you'll find a link to on my Amazon shop, amazon.co.uk/shop/British history, where I've put links to lots of books, and I'm trying to keep updating it, actually, because there's far more that I would recommend than are on there at the moment. But he wrote this book, excuse me, called Young and Damned and Fair, and it is, I would say, and many other people would agree, is the biography of Catherine Howard. Now, what I wanted to speak to Gareth about, let me just finish that point, actually. So that the interview with Gareth will be live for patrons on the 14th of April. So it'll be available to everyone else. It will be available to everyone on the 14th of April. The patrons got to ask Gareth their own questions, and it's that extended interview that patrons only get access to, and everyone else gets the main interview. So if you are interested in putting your own questions to historians that I'll be speaking to, and I'll be letting you know soon who I've got lined up, then if you're a member of the Patreon of any tier, then you can put your questions forward to them. So that's quite cool. Anyway, so that will be available on the 14th of April, and you will be able again to win a signed copy of Gareth's book. So that's the way it's going to roll. When I've got a historian interview, then you will get a chance to win a signed, or with Heather I can't because she's over in America, but Gareth I shall be seeing in May before the competition closes, so I will get a signed copy from him. And what I wanted to discuss, and it came up because we've discussed it here and on Clubhouse rooms and History After Dark rooms, was Oh, Anadita, Heather's interview is coming out for you because you're a YouTube member on Tuesday, and for everyone else on Friday. So where did I get to? I'm so sorry. Right. Yeah, so we were talking, what I wanted to talk to Gareth about, and like I say, this was set off by some discussions we've had, is to understand. I wanted to talk about the downfalls both of Anne Boleyn and of Catherine Howard, compare and contrast them, and in a way that we can then learn about each of them from what happened to the other, if that makes sense. So the way the situation unfolded with Anne is very different to the way the situation unfolded with Catherine. Their treatment, who else went down with them, their method of execution, the timescales, all of this, if you look at one and look at the other, tells you about what happened in the corresponding in the other woman's situation. So that is what I was posing to Gareth, and that was the premise of the interview. So I think you will really enjoy that one, and so that is going to be available on the 14th of April. Like I say, patrons will get the extended interview because they got to ask Gareth their own questions, and so they will get that. And actually, I'll just say to patrons now, it makes the interview not very long, lovely and long. Like, it's brilliant. We spent about another 40 minutes or so going through your fantastic questions, so that was brilliant. So yeah, so that's coming up as well, so that's quite good. Right, have I covered up no, have I covered everything that I wanted to talk to you about today? No, not yet. Now, I've mentioned already, next week I'll be on location, so that will be fun. Lisa says, my love of history came from reading Jean Plaidy. My first of her books I read was called Murder Most Royal, which is about Anne and Catherine. Ah, interesting. So did most people, drop in the comments, how did most people come into history? Through fiction or, excuse me, oh goodness, so sorry. I've got a big tickle. Through fiction or a good history teacher. How did you get into history? Mine is a bit of a weird story, I think. I was actually on the lookout for a female role model. Does that sound ridiculous? I wanted someone who seemed human but had a greatness. And I started reading about Elizabeth I, and then I went over the story last week as part of the first birthday celebrations of this Thursday Tea Time Live. But that's effectively where my interest started. Right. Bobby Ann says Tudor history from the movie Ghost when he sang Henry VIII I Am. That's brilliant. I was about 10. Gripped now. That's fantastic. Oh, I love it. Oh, that's funny. So what else have we got? Melissa's came from the White Queen. I really enjoyed those. The White Queen and the Red Princess. Bobby Ann, it's kind of embarrassing. It's fine. You're in a safe place here, darling. A safe place. It's funny. I like it. So yeah. Now, I want to tell you about a couple of reels I've got, because you might be interested in these, that I've put out over the last week or so. So on Instagram, you can go and have a look at my reels if you haven't already. One is Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester's tomb at St Mary's Church in the middle of Warwick. So it's just a reel, so it's like 30 seconds or so, looking at the chapel and looking at his tomb. So basically you see the chapel, you see the tomb, you see the tomb of his son. So he did have a son with Lettice Knowles, who died when he was I read one account that said 3, one account that says 4, so I went with 3. And so you can see that reel, you can see that that place. And then I've also done another one. Or let me just do this. Jenna says, my love for British history started off in high school, but my addiction to Tudor history started several years ago when discovering the White Queen on Stars. I think history drama has a big part to play in getting people interested in history. I think its advantages far outweigh the issues we then get with people thinking they know the, like as if the conversations were actually recorded. Oh, let's go. Mad journalist, half of my childhood I grew in a country that was under British rule for a long time. But they always glossed over stuff and taught history wrong. So I really wanted to learn history. Yeah. And to correct the snooty teacher. Yeah. Interesting. Elements of Brace as the Tudors got her into it. And Janice, see, I can't, Janice, what is wrong with me? Also got into Jean Plaidy to get into history. Lottie Rose, I grew up in Eltham. Oh, fantastic. So mine came from visiting Eltham Palace. Absolutely. As a child, and Greenwich. Yes, you're not far from all of those places. That's a very good introduction. Imagine said that got me started in actual British history and the histories of other countries and loved it. Fantastic. Yes. Yeah. Sorry for the typos. I'm doing all right. Did I manage okay? Reading it anyway. I knew what you meant. History, of course, is literally everything that's gone before. It's huge, and there's so many different elements of it. Different ways of approaching the same thing, same event, same person. You know, do you want to approach it through their achievements or their personality or their health history or what other people thought of them, blah blah blah. I mean, you can cut it all different ways. Katie says, way back in primary school, and then you sort of forgot, then got back into it with her son learning about Tudors at school. Yes, it's back on the curriculum, isn't it? I think for primary schools, Tudor history. Oh, welcome, Sarah. Hi. Sarah is guiding my tour group in May. Oh, I could talk about this actually. Oh, thank you, my journalist. In May, I have a tour called the Anne Boleyn Tour, and we stay at Hever Castle. And on the 19th of May, which is the anniversary of Anne Boleyn's execution at the Tower, we go to the Tower. The day before, we're at Hampton Court Palace, and Sarah is guiding us. So Hampton Court tour guide, go and follow her on Instagram if you don't already. And so that's really I'm really looking forward to that. Now my other reel is linked to this. So the other reel on Instagram that I was going to tell you about is is the route that Anne came in. Hi Sarah, came into the Tower of London. It was open when I was there in May. Actually on the 19th of May. Should have been there with a tour group, but let's not get into that. So the reel shows us, yes, Sarah's looking forward to it too. Where Anne came in from the inside. So I know I've shared photos. In fact, I did the reel and I couldn't find the photo of the outside. I'm so sorry. It's incomplete, really. You can tell me off. But from the inside, what's on the other side of that door, I filmed from inside there, coming out, and then looked at, it's a reel, so it's quick, right? But where the Great Hall, where Anne's trial was held on the 15th of May, that has now gone, but the site of it is in that reel. And then I pan around from where the apartments were, where she was kept, across the green, back to the Great Hall. But you can, those apartments. Do you know, I've never got to the bottom of this bit. Let me explain. She's in the apartments, and it might just be I need to have a look at the layout of the buildings at that time. And she comes out of the royal apartments, and I'm not sure whether she goes through the Great Hall or whether she goes through the courtyard, but she's got the White Tower on her right, and she goes through Cold Harbour Gate. I've also heard of it said coal harbour. But anyway, goes to the gate. That also no longer exists. And then right round to the other side of the White Tower. So where there's the monument with the glass pillow, I think most people know now is not where the scaffold um, had ever been erected, possibly, because the executions there were so few and far between. There was not a permanent scaffold. So she walks all the way around to this specially erected scaffold, which is in the area between the White Tower and what is now the Waterloo Barracks. Anyway, so there's another reel for you if you're interested. Emmy says, "I've always been obsessed with history, specifically Tudor. I don't know where it comes from, but I read my first book about Anne Boleyn when I was 10. That's good going. The fashion history was a huge draw too. Well, they did know how to dress, did they not? I feel a bit. I feel a little grieved that what's the fashion now? I mean, I'm sat here in jeans and a t-shirt, basically. Even in the war, where fabric was fewer and far between, they had a style. They did their hair. Anyway, feeling a bit, yeah, it's a bit of a shame. But anyway, so those are two reels that you might be interested in: the tomb of Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, Elizabeth's favourite, and Anne Boleyn at the Tower. I've got longer videos about Anne Boleyn at the Tower on YouTube as well. But anyway, they're the two reels. Amy says, yes, why did we stop dressing like this? Well, I'm pretty sure at our level of society, not that I know, maybe Emmy, maybe you are Princess Emmy, we wouldn't have been in anything like that. We'd have been in nice long skirts, pulling up the mud, probably got very heavy. Elements of Bray says, I'd love to get a master's in Tudors and Stuart history. We haven't got time to go into that today, but yes. And I tell you why, and we spoke about this on yesterday's History After Dark room briefly. Whereas things that the Tudors did, we've got the butterfly effect and we're still feeling the remnants of it. Absolutely. But the Stuarts is more direct. The things that happened under the Stuart era, we are directly dealing with our political system, our financial system, and actually even down to things like the ceremonial opening of Parliament. The Queen can't go into the chamber, the House of Commons, and that's after Charles I went in there and tried to arrest people, dissenters. Elements of Bray. Oh, sorry, did I? Sorry, I scratched my microphone then. Imagine it says, girls, do you really want to be lugging and laundering all that crap and hindering you in the toilet, especially? Yes. Well, yes, especially when it's time of the month. So I would go to like 1940s style fashion, something that is feminine but covered. Yeah. Genesis, there was very heavy skirts. I only wear 3 layers of them. Oh yes, because you do you dress up, don't you? You do reenactment. I could see them. Yes, you can see why it was the highest cause of the highest cause of death for women was drowning. Indeed. Emmy says it's all right. She'll just want to wear it for a few hours and then take it off. Mr. Bray said, University of Buckingham. You know exactly where you want to go, but don't know what to do with it afterwards. I don't know, but I think studying something you love is the way forward, and then work out afterwards, because there's lots of skills you get from studying that are transferable. Imagine it's 20s, 40s, 50s and 60s even. Yeah. Like, what do we do? I'd go back to wearing hats. I think it would be lovely. So yeah, right. I think I've covered everyone's comments for now. Lisa and Janice are having a discussion about Jean. So, patrons, let me just remind you, last week you all have the Tutbury Castle blog. It was actually quite complicated to write, so I hope it's come across okay. It explains the who's owned it, who's lived there. I've already mentioned Mary Queen of Scots was in prison there. how it came into Crown hands, and it is still in Crown hands actually. This week, today, in fact, I should mention this, the Hereford Cathedral Look Around is live. So upper class members, you get a shortened version, and then if you're nobility or above, you get the full on version. Sarah at Hampton Court Travel Tour Guide says Longbourn by Joe Baker is a great novel about the servants in Pride and Prejudice. The paragraphs describing the laundry and cleaning are fab. I like that though. It's real, isn't it? It's real. I think when we're so high level talking about kings and queens and whatever, then we are missing quite a lot, aren't we? This came across to me in a couple of things in the Houses of Power book by Simon Thurley, which is brilliant, which I must make sure I've put a link to in the Amazon shop. He was talking about the falconry. The falconry was a big thing. Now you can't just rock up and use someone else's bird. The bird has to be trained, and it has to by the handler. So if Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII have their own birds, these birds don't care that they're the king or queen. You sleep next to the bird when it's a little bird and you're training it. You sleep next to it. So they had, and this is why it comes up in Simon's books, because he's an architectural historian. They slept in apartments or rooms. I don't know quite what the layout would have been, but next to the bird, so in the mews. So that kind of day-to-day stuff we miss. He also mentions in part of in his book about Henry VIII having a Turkish bathroom. Has anyone ever heard about that? I've never heard about that. Now you would think, unless it would look so out of place that people writing dramas wouldn't want to put it in, but wouldn't that be a fantastic setting for a Henry? Oh, it's a bathroom though, actually. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just thinking I would like a Turkish bathroom. There you go. Sarah says yes at Hampton Court Palace. And I'm just so intrigued by that Turkish bathroom idea that he had this Turkish bathroom. So I'm presuming, Sarah, running hot and cold water and tiles and beautiful stuff. Bobby Ann's also heard about that. Yeah. I find that fascinating. In the Bain Tower, which has gone. Has it gone? Is that the one that's gone? Yes. So I would love to know more about that. If anyone, maybe Sarah, you can tell us more about that when you're guiding my tour group on the 18th of May. That'd be fantastic. Oh, it's still there. Okay, cool. Fabulous. I will be picking your brains about that. Hello, Rachel. Welcome. Rachel's managed to join us. Oh, Sarah's going to show me. Fantastic. Yay. Oh, that is very exciting. In fact, while I remember then, because that's very exciting. So the Anne Boleyn tour in May is fully booked. Hi, Kathy. Welcome. So the tour, in May is fully booked. We do have one going next year, 2023. I've still got to release the details, but you can drop me a mail if you want to be on the priority list for that. Lisa says, was Turkish a sign of status? Turkish rugs, etc. Yes, they're an import, and they're going to be very expensive. They're expensive to make. They're expensive to import. So yeah. Emmy says, Talking Tudors podcast has an amazing episode about the regular people in the Tudor era. So fascinating. Yes. The regular people, yous and me's of the past. But so Lottie asks, is there a waiting list for the Anne Boleyn tour? For this year, you can certainly put yourself on a waiting list for this year if you would like. And I'm about to tell you, I have one space now on the Elizabeth tour, which is in July, which you can find the full itinerary for on BritishHistoryTours.com. A lovely lady who is coming on the tour is actually now, as a mature student, I'm so in awe of this, signing up to do a degree. So she won't be able to be there, but so there's one space available, maybe able to push it for two if there's a couple who want to come on. But yeah, if you want to drop me a line, then I can certainly put you on a waiting list for the Anne Boleyn tour for this year in case anyone can't make it. You can also drop me a line if you would like to have priority notice of the Anne Boleyn tour 2023, which will be similar time of year, in fact probably exactly the same dates. So that's cool. I want to tell you about last week. I was talking about we've got an amazing day at Harvington. So if you have a look at that interview with Phil about Harvington, I've shared posts and stuff about Harvington as well. But we'll be there when there's no one, no member of the public there. So we get our own tour of the place. We will. So we'll have been at Kenilworth Castle in the morning. We're going to get to Harvington Hall, have a tour. Then Leslie Smith will be there as Elizabeth I. I can't wait. That's just going to be incredible. Followed by a talk by Tracy Borman, followed by dinner in the hall. I think that's just one day at the tour, everybody. So if you want to grab that last place, then drop me, why don't you email me, office@BritishHistoryTours, and I will assign it on a first come first served basis. But you can see the itinerary. Actually, not so much detail, actually. I'm telling you more detail than I think is on the website at the moment, because I've been able to secure all that detail within the last couple of weeks. But it's on BritishHistoryTours.com. Yes, Colleen, it's going to be fabulous. So you can see the outline itinerary. But yeah, you probably know more than I've put on the website at the moment. So that's quite cool. I'm getting very, very excited to be finally out on the road with everybody. I do private tours as well, anyone. But anyway, I won't keep going on about that. Because you can check me out, or you can just drop me an email if you want me to help you with anything. Coming up on Patreon. So next week I have a live, because I'm out on location. I'll be doing a live walk around for the patrons, and then I'm going to do a blog about the Prince of Wales and the Prince of Wales feathers. Why is it that the heir to the British throne, or English and subsequently British throne, is Prince of Wales? Where does that title come from, and where does the emblem come from? Because you see that everywhere. So I'm going to do a blog on that. I've got a virtual tour of Acton Court for patrons, another live location, which I've got a couple that I'm thinking of doing, so I haven't decided yet. And then in April, we've got a blog about the Tudor siblings. So that's going to be Edward VI, Mary I, Elizabeth I, and Henry Fitzroy. On the 14th of April, everyone will get to see this, but the patrons get the extended version. That is the interview with Gareth Russell. And then on my quarterly event, I am going to give patrons a beginner's guide to Old English kings. So these are the ones that came before the Norman Conquest. Now, that because it seems a bit boring, right? And they're not boring. What the problem is they're further back. They're pre-Norman Conquest. The Normans wrote a lot down. So there's people with like 35-year reigns, 30-year reigns, 20-year reigns, and we know hardly anything about them, which is a shame. But we do know quite a bit about some of them. So anyway, I'm going to do a beginner's guide to Old English kings, which will be I think quite fun. And so that will be in Patreon, and so many of you here are patrons, so I just want to say thank you for that, because it's absolutely fabulous to have you there. So before I go, because we've done an hour and 10. Thank you so much, everyone who's stayed with me. I've given you our just for fun question. So that is based on the Henry VIII is buried video, and it's how long is Henry's funeral procession? I haven't even got on to the History After Dark last night. We did 2 hours. We talked about the best British monarchs. Andrew says, hello, really enjoyed the chat anyway. Roast chicken. My wife smoked. No idea. No no idea, Andrew, but thank you. Um, yes, so the History After Dark last night was the Best British Monarch. I started it off with I have to say I didn't go best, I went worst, because some of the nominations I was scoffing at. Queen Victoria was one. James the First we didn't get onto. James the First of England, Sixth of Scotland we didn't get onto, but he was one that I thought, really. Henry VIII was in there, odd. But we got onto, we put our own forward. Uh, uh, yeah, Lottie says last night was so interesting. I loved Cat's advocacy for Anne. Yeah, I was about to say. So we put forward our own. Mine was sort of based on if he'd been allowed to be king, I think he would have been good, and that was James II. Catherine put forward Henry V. He wasn't in the list for some reason. Before Charles II, Cat mentioned, and Anne. I did mention Athelstan. Which some of you already know is has come up in conversation before. He's effectively the under his rule, England becomes united. So by the time you've got William the Conqueror conquering England, it's because there's a united England, which happened under him. Jenna says I may or may not live down the new emblem idea in Cat's head. Anyone who joined History After Dark last night will know that Cat coined a new phrase, which I can't mention in polite conversation, so not today, I'm afraid. Jenna, though, you will be happy to know that someone has already designed that emblem. And so, yeah, so we're trying to get hold of a high definition or a good version of it so that we can stick on a t-shirt. So that would be very funny. We were basically alluding to or talking about the fact that Henry VIII's hero was Henry V, and Cat coined a phrase about how excitable Henry VIII might get about Henry V's war prowess. I shall leave it there. Check out History After Dark if you want. Now, so History After Dark will be a podcast from the 16th of February as well. Like I said earlier on, when a new podcast goes live, some of the bigger platforms take a couple of weeks to pick it up. So look out on my my social media, on Katrina.Marchant, and on Not Just the Tudor Tracker, that is Kat and Catherine's profiles, and I will, if I can, on history.after.dark as well, obviously share the link directly to the podcast, which will be on Anchor, and I think you can get that. I think anyone can get that. So Rachel saying Kit Harington. Oh, Jon Snow in Game of Thrones. I'm 1.5 episodes into the whole Game of Thrones thing. I've got a lot to catch up on. Is playing Henry V in theatre. Oh, might be good. Which theatre is that? That would be very fun. Yes, so I will share the link directly to that podcast, and then in a few weeks it will be easy to find whether you listen on Apple or Google or any of the others. So that will be fun and easy. We've got a specially recorded episode that's going to be the first one, and then it's basically audio from our History After Dark rooms on Instagram that you will be able to grab hold of and listen in the car or at the gym or wherever else you would like to consume your spicy history podcast. So everyone, we are at an hour, nearly an hour and 15. So I'm going to say thank you very much for joining me today for Thursday Tea Time History Chat Live. Thank you, especially to those of you who are YouTube members or patrons, or who buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Philippa. I just love it every time a coffee comes through, and I will start showing photos when I when I go out for the coffees. But yes, thank you all of you for your support. Thank you for joining me today. And if you're around tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I am doing the Visiting Tudor Britain live on Instagram on my handle, so at British_history_tours. And Deb Royal from Tudor_Times will be joining me, and she is going to be talking to us about places associated with Margaret Douglas. So that's going to be fantastic. So thank you ever so much, everybody, and I will see you all soon.